Welcome back to my channel. I'm Dr. Courtney. I'm here to talk about all things women's health, life, business, anything really. So today we're going to get right into it. I have a bunch of questions that I pulled from my Instagram that are the most frequently asked questions, most commonly asked questions, all about pelvic health and what you should know, what you shouldn't know, what you should, what you shouldn't do. And today I'm going to rapid fire them questions off, and then we're going to get into the answers to them and my opinion on them. Keep in mind, this is all my opinion and experience that I've had and clinical knowledge that I've gained. So if it doesn't align with you and it doesn't align with your current plan of care that you're working with your physical therapist on, or it doesn't align with your doctor's advice, keep that in mind. That is my disclaimer. This is not medical advice. This is my professional opinion and things that I would maybe recommend for my own clients. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it and let's answer those questions. First question, should I be doing Kegels? Well, first, let's explain what actually a Kegel is and why we should need it, and then should we actually even use them, right? So the first thing that we're going to say about Kegels is that it's a pelvic floor muscle contraction. The pelvic floor muscles are a group of muscles that lie underneath the bottom of the pelvis, right? In order to actually contract the muscles, you're going to do what's called a Kegel, and it's a term coined by a male doctor whose last name was Kegel. So there's that. And what a pelvic floor muscle contraction is it's something to contract the muscle just like you would any other muscle in the body, right? This is a bicep curl or bicep contraction. So should I be doing them? Well, that's a question probably for you and a provider who has identified what's actually going on at the pelvis. And what I mean by this is because Kegels are not something you want to do just because you read about them on Google or on YouTube, because they're actually a muscle contraction that can make things worse. Dun, dun, dun. Yes, worse. So with that being said, you don't always need to be doing Kegels if it's not actually appropriate for you. And what I mean by this is if you are somebody who has pelvic floor tension, pain, hip issues, back issues, like pain is like your thing that's happening in your body, probably not going to be recommending to do Kegels because you're going to be doing a muscle contraction that's probably already, or to a muscle group that's probably already tight. And so why would you want to add to the mix, right? So instead, I probably wouldn't recommend doing Kegels, right? So you don't really know if you should or shouldn't be doing them unless you've been examined by a professional who has literally listened to your story, listened to your symptoms, and can give you clear, sound advice on if those singular muscle contractions are a good idea for you or not. Don't just go do them because you read on Google or you saw on YouTube to do them, right? Because it can always make things worse. So there's that. Why do I leak whenever I cough, laugh, or sneeze? Well, sister, there is a lot of reasons to that question. But basically, leakage with coughing, laughing, sneezing is what's known as stress incontinence. Stress incontinence, as it is pressure mismanagement within the core canister. If you think about your pelvic floor muscles like a hammock at the bottom of the pelvis, if you have weakness in these muscles and their primary function is to contract and lift and hold things in space, and there's weakness, they're probably not doing their job correctly or enough, right? So if there's a sudden increase in pressure coming from above, right? So a cough, laugh, sneeze is something that generates a lot of abdominal pressure downward into the pelvis. If you're having that, something coming from above pushing down and you have weakness below, what's going to happen is you might see symptoms of like leakage, whether it's urinary issues or fecal issues. And that pressure from above exceeds the pressure coming back up from below. And that's what's going to create leakage. So my advice, if you're somebody who's struggling with leakage with coughing, laughing, sneezing, is to figure out what's going on, one, at the bottom of the pelvis, like why aren't the pelvic floor muscles doing their job? Are they weak? Are they tight? Are they uncoordinated? Probably all of the above. Or what's going on at the abdomen? Are we having energy leakage? Is there a reason you're not managing pressure well? So as soon as you figure out those two things, then you're probably going to be on your way to discovering or to figure out why you're having leakage in the first place. Do I really need to stop lifting or minimize my weights forever when I'm diagnosed with prolapse? Oh my goodness. My nose itches. No, absolutely not. Because here's why. Everyone who has prolapse, there's a reason for the prolapse. And I'm not talking about because you had a bad birth injury, right? I'm not discounting that. But the reason most times with prolapse is there are pelvic floor muscle, glute, adductor, hip flexor, hip deep core deficiencies in strength, in muscular balance, right? Coordination, right? The muscles surrounding the pelvis aren't able to do their job very well. And why you should never really stop lifting or minimizing weights is because you're not going to get those muscles stronger. And if we're having prolapse in general, like, you need muscular support because your connective tissue support is no longer doing its job. So if we were to stop lifting weights, we would be moving in the same direction that you are in. You're going to continue having symptoms. You're going to continue worsening symptoms because we know that you can lift weights safely, effectively, as long as you learn how your body works, right? You need to learn how the core and the pelvic floor work together. You need to learn that having good, solid glute strength and adductor strength and hip flexor strength corresponds to having solid pelvic floor strength. Having the connection between your pelvic muscles and the pelvic floor muscles is what's truly going to help you live a life that is way less symptomatic than if you were to not lift at all and just remain symptomatic and just deal with having the prolapse. Next up, I'm seeing a physical therapist, but why am I still making little to zero improvements? Well, I wonder the same thing. And I wondered the same thing for a long time when I started helping people that were having the same chronicity of issues, seeing provider after provider after provider. I'm like, what is going on? Why aren't people getting better? And why I think this is a reoccurring issue is because in general, obviously you're here for women's health, so I'm going to talk about the world of women's health. In general, the world of women's health, lack of actual good quality healthcare. And not only women, but men as well. Like, I think health itself is lacking good quality care. And what I mean by this is because when it comes to having pain, symptoms of whatever sort, I think that most providers look at that as the problem, right? Like, they're looking at, okay, why are they having low back pain? And then they're going to dial in their focus on just the low back, right? The lumbar spine, or maybe the joint above and the joint below. But they're going to be zeroing on the fact that, like, okay, if you have pain in this area, that's what I'm going to focus on. And I think that it's not the provider's fault. It's just like they're trying to provide a one solution for you because you're the person right in front of them at that moment in time. So I think what needs to happen, better, more efficiently, is being able to ask better questions, right? So if someone is coming in presenting with pain, I feel like, in my experience and what we do with our clients, is like we're asking them questions about their actual health. So we're asking questions like, okay, how is your sleep? How is your stress, right? How is your nutrition? What is that actually looking like, right? How is your hydration status? How's the support that you have around this? What's your support like at home? How's your job, right? You're asking questions about their actual life. And I think this is really important because pain is so multifactorial that if you're not asking the questions about like their actual lifestyle, you're missing a big, huge piece of what pain actually is. And pain in general we refer to as the biopsychosocial model, where we're looking at the biological components, we're looking at the psychological components, then we're looking at the social components, right? So with that being said, like, we need to be able to address all of those issues in order to actually truly heal the person in front of us, especially if they've been dealing with it for a long time. So if you are seeing a PT and you are still making little to no progress and you're wondering, why is my back not getting better? My hips not getting better? My pelvic floor issues not getting better? I would look at this and ask yourself, has your provider dug deeper into your lifestyle, your habits, your day-to-day things that you do? How do you show up for yourself, right? Your psychosocial components, because those are the things that I find are the biggest components of true healing. So if you're in a position where you're like, I'm just so sick of going, I'm wasting my money, I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting my energy, then I would start asking those questions yourself, to yourself, but also asking your provider those things. Open up about those things, and I think that that can really drastically change your plan of care. How do I know if my symptoms are caused by an overactive or a weak pelvic floor? Oh, I love this question. Well, first of all, let's not confuse overactive and weak, because if you have an overactive pelvic floor, it's also weak, right? So the way you want to think about the pelvic floor is, in general, your pelvic floor muscles need to be able to relax and contract just like any other muscle in the body, right? If it can't have solid range of motion in either direction, right? A solid contraction, solid lengthening, your muscle is not efficiently active, right? Like, lack of better words. I hate that. I didn't like that, but just for simplicity. You can either be overactive or underactive, right? But a muscle is its weakest when it is at its shortest range of motion and its longest range of motion. It's most effective in the middle range, right? Or all the way range of motion, right? So if you're underactive or you're overactive, your muscles are going to be weak, period. So a lot of times, women, I have found in, I would say, most women that I treat, like 90% of people that I treat, have an overactive pelvic floor muscle group. And so all of them have weak muscles because they're overactive. They're chronically on, or they're tense. And that might come from a lot of reasons. So you don't really know if it's overactive or underactive unless you're having symptoms, really. So you can have symptoms that show up both ways. You can have an underactive pelvic floor and still have leakage. You can have an overactive pelvic floor and still have leakage. So the only true way you're going to know if it's overactive or underactive is by working with a professional who's literally going to be able to tell you what's overactive versus underactive. But I will say, across the board, who have, overactive muscles are people who are probably having more pain than those who aren't. Pain with intercourse, low back pain, tailbone pain, SI joint pain, urinary pain, bowel movements, pain with that. Across the board, pain is probably the number one indicator, but I would say, it's hard to tell just by those symptoms alone that your pelvic floor muscles are overactive. If you're an athlete, probably overactive. So across the board, you're never really going to know unless you're actually going to have an assessment by a professional. But across the board, the symptoms can go both ways. So I wouldn't hang up on the fact that you have an overactive or underactive pelvic floor. Just treat the symptoms and work with somebody who knows how to treat the symptoms. Do I have to live with my leakage issues forever, or can it be fixed? It can absolutely be fixed. Absolutely. I think I can just stop right there. Is back hip pain related to the pelvic floor? Absolutely. Absolutely it is. Again, because your pelvic floor muscle group at the bottom of the pelvis, all of the attachment sites of your pelvic floor muscles are also attachment sites of your bones on the pelvis. And if we think about the way the pelvis and the sacrum and the tailbone and the lumbar spine all come together, a lot of those attachment points are bone-to-bone connection. And so if there's tension in the pelvic floor muscles or tension in the low back muscles or even glute muscles, it's going to affect your ability for the whole system to work together. I'm not saying it's a causation. I'm saying it could be correlated, right? It's a correlation, not a causation. But I do see a lot of trends of people who have tightness in their pelvic floor muscles end up with low back pain or SI joint pain, tailbone pain, all the above. And oppositely, people who have a lot of low back pain eventually lead to having hip issues, glute issues, pelvic floor issues. So it goes hand in hand both ways, but they are absolutely related. Is it normal to have leakage, prolapse symptoms after having children and with age? Yes. I would say that it's very common to have these symptoms as you age, for sure, and with having children, but it doesn't mean it's normal. It is absolutely not normal to have symptoms because there are plenty of people out there who have had plenty of kids and are older and have zero symptoms. So to say that it would be normal is absolutely incorrect. I would say across the board though, like, you don't want to just accept that getting older is the reason you have pelvic floor issues. Well, I hear it all the time. I went through menopause and that's why I started leaking. I guess it is the way it is. Or somebody will tell you, oh yeah, I've had kids, just you wait till that leakage starts in. Like, no, absolutely not. And the people that are telling you those things, like literally in one ear, out the other, don't listen. Because you shouldn't have to deal with these things because they are issues that are so easily able to be identified for the reason why they're happening and fixed. To just like settle for it is like, why? Like, that's just one thing as a woman that you just don't need to be dealing with, right? So I don't think you need to be walking around saying it's normal on one hand. I think you can walk around saying it's common and be like, yeah, it's actually really common after childbirth to have these issues, but it's also normal to go get it fixed. So, yep, both common, both situations, but absolutely not normal, and 100% you can do something about it. Well, that was fun doing a rapid fire of 10 questions and giving you all of the answers that I have in my brain, and I hope you do with it what you will. And if you ever have any more questions, I would love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. I will make an entire video on your question if you'd like me to. And as always, I have an entire free community that answers a lot more of these questions in way more depth in my free school community. I will also drop the link below and you can, join the group. And if you ever need anything, you know where to find me. On Instagram, TikTok, all social media platforms. If you ever have a question, please reach out and don't forget to subscribe for more.